Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alexis O'Banion. I'm the creative director and technology strategist over at Mingei International Museum. And I'm so excited to be talking to you guys today about something that we've been working on for, it seems like forever. I'm joined today by Raygun. They have been really our partners in helping us build out all our public-facing aspects of our digital strategy that we've been working on for so many times, or for so many years. And I'd like to give Stacy and Dalton an opportunity to introduce themselves.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Stacy Edelstein. I'm the co-founder and design director at Raygun.
I'm Dalton Rooney. I'm the co-founder and technology director at Raygun.
And we are based here in San Diego, so if anyone needs tips on where to go for dinner tonight, please don't hesitate to ask. We will be happy to share with you. But a little bit about Raygun and who we are. Dalton and I actually got our start in library and archives working at StoryCorps back in the day. We were the in-house design and development team there, working on the website and brand. Then about 8 years ago, we pivoted to running our own design studio, where we're working with museums and cultural institutions and nonprofits through strategy, design, and technology. We got connected with Mingei about almost 4 years ago, and we've been partnering together ever since to make their digital presence accessible to their audiences. What started with the online collections and then moved into the website redesign this year. So today we wanted to share our journey that we've taken together as partners to really bring the museum's website online and to connect with as many new audiences, existing audiences as possible, making accessibility at the forefront of our work. And it truly has been a journey, and as we've discovered, when it comes to designing accessible experiences, no aesthetic sacrifices really are required. Beauty and accessibility can coexist and are interrelated. And we've discovered that accessibility is just as much an editorial consideration as it is technical. It has as much to do with design and content as it does the technology. And as we found, it's really a study in empathy. And we hope to share, our findings with you today and invite that conversation going forward. So I'll hand it over to Alexis to tell us a little bit about Mingei and get us started.
So Mingei International Museum is located here locally in San Diego in Balboa Park. And we're an institution that champions human creativity by exhibiting folk art, craft, and design. I basically say we get to show all the cool stuff that we have in our collection. And with the goal of inspiring creativity in others. So when I came on board to the museum in 2011, shortly thereafter we did a long-range plan, as museums like to do. What are we going to be doing for the next 10 years? And part of that long-range plan was identifying core values, or pillars as we like to call them, that support that plan. And one of them was accessibility. And thinking back at that document, which I laid out in InDesign for like 3 weeks, so a lot of the things that I was looking at, if we're truly accessible, we're going to double our visitors in 10 years, and we're going to blah, 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 blah. And I think back to that now, and really the ways that we've really been kind of hitting that accessibility mark really had nothing to do with anything that we were planning on way back then. Not to say that we weren't successful, but it's just when you're making, when you make the decision, this is what our institution values, this is what is going to be guiding our decisions, it's going to surprise you how you're going to express that. So one of the ways I like to talk about is Free Resident Tuesday, which if any of you went to Balboa Park on Tuesday, I'm sure you were oddly surprised by how crowded it was, because a lot of the institutions are free on Tuesdays. So, this is kind of one of these things that is difficult for museums in the park because, the frontline staff are heavily impacted. You have to check IDs. You have to ask, what's your zip code? What's your mother's maiden name? Like, what, da, 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 da. And so in terms of just kind of workshopping from a visitor experience point of view, like, we got to get better at this Free Tuesday thing. We also were kind of confronted with what our community needs. This was, I think we had a conversation early 2016. Nothing especially important happened then. But just thinking about the word resident having a different meaning than it did before. It's not who's local and who's a tourist. It had further implications. And if we are truly valuing accessibility, shouldn't we just be welcoming for all? And so we kind of disposed with the resident word and just said, hey, it's Tuesday, we're free today. And everyone is welcome, which was great for our frontline staff because you don't have to have volunteers checking IDs and getting in people's business. And you were able to have your frontline staff answering questions, like, where's the restroom? Or what is a Mingei? Or, all those things. And that allowed, did we plan for that 4 years earlier? Like, if we're accessible, we're going to be free to all to everyone on Tuesday. No, but we knew we wanted to be accessible. That was important. So this sort of metaphor, if you will, is going to guide us through our discussion today. So really, accessibility was a core value that our museum decided to invest in.
Yeah, absolutely. And that framework is what we took through the entire website design process. It wasn't really just about code. It was, what is accessibility? What does that mean? How can we get into that mindset? And we wanted to share some of that framework with you and walk through it and hopefully give you some really great takeaways. I just realized we have a fantastic handout that I forgot to pass around, which we'll do at some point. It was very rushed. Yeah, let's pass it around. We actually did put together a really great handout we'll refer to throughout the presentation with a bit of a deeper dive into accessibility. But anyway, this framework I think can help address the stages of our work together. So like we mentioned earlier, accessibility really is a study in empathy. It's not something we wanted to add on after the fact, but rather something we wanted to bake into the process of really understanding what our users wanted, what are the goals of the museum, and how can we make sure accessibility permeated everything we did and will continue to do to make the website as open and accessible as possible. And another thing we learned too was that it's not just a one and done. We're excited to share how we're continuing to learn and make incremental improvements to the site over time. So really getting a handle on what our users need, who they are, how we can best solve them was that start of that empathy study. And to us, accessibility, there's a lot of checklists, there's a lot of definitions, there's a lot of acronyms out there, but really the easiest way that we understood in our minds what accessibility was is that it's really about access. We're talking about usability. To make something accessible is to make it usable. And it's to design experiences with intention and empathy for those with disabilities as well as those without. And really core to our process too was this belief that making something accessible makes it better for everybody.
So with that in mind, making something accessible for everybody, sometimes when you think about accessibility, you're thinking about your visitor, right? You're thinking about your customer. You rarely think about your friend down the hall that asked you for an image of this object in your collection 2 weeks ago and you haven't edited it in a web-friendly format. And you're like, oh yeah, I need to get that to you. We rarely think about the internal bottlenecks that we have because a lot of our institutions, everybody is at capacity. We're all kind of working hard at our jobs. We don't have time to do our jobs and also think about what is the most accessible way that I can store what I'm doing for everybody else in the institution should they need it at some point in time. No one's thinking that way. So when we embarked on a digital strategy, we just did an audit of how does information move through our museum? What are the biggest pain points? biggest pain point, turns out, is access to images that are edited, which fell under my responsibility for quite a while. And understandable, like it just wasn't, and you just don't have enough. We actually now have a full part-time photographer. That's all he does is take photos and edits them. I'm like, how did I ever manage? But thinking about if you don't have a good, if you don't have accessibility internally, public-facing accessibility is never going to be fully attainable. It's really something that we had to take a look at and say, if we want to solve for, having a really beautiful, accessible public-facing digital platform, I'm using all the buzzwords today, then, we need to be able to have a really beautiful internal-facing content platform. And so that's what we were able to do. We were given a lovely IMLS grant, which if you want to hear about more of that, please attend the session tomorrow. I think it's like at 10:30. And hear more about all the deets. But basically, we used 3 out-of-the-box SaaS products, Slack for internal communication, Google Drive for just like a universally accessible repository of all of our data, and Airtable, which is our workflow and just how we share work product with each other. And that is something that took us a while to kind of get situated and kind of like Goldilocks, not too hot, not too cold, just right. It's not about just getting the most powerful piece of software and throwing it at your institution. You'll get cut. Finding something that's truly meeting the needs of your institution and your staff members is really important. And then once we kind of had that baseline, we were able to say, okay, what works really well with what we have in place when we're looking at designing our public-facing platform. So we'll get more into that a little bit later.
Yeah, and craft.
Yes, craft is the CMS we ended up using. And so once we kind of got aligned in terms of how we work together as an institution, we needed to kind of get on message with all the projects that we would have moving forward. So that includes a renovation, our digital strategy, our rebrand. We had a whole bunch of projects, somehow all kind of funneling through my department. I'm just like realization of that. Not the renovation. I'm not responsible for that. And so a team of us wrote our creative brief, namely my boss, Jessica York, who did some beautiful writing. And in there, we really truly defined our key audiences. Who are we going at? Who are we trying to talk to? What does that mean? What are they thinking? What do they want? What's our objective? We know our mission, we know our vision. Okay, so then let's put that in an actionable, sentence. Like, what is our objective? What's the key idea? And then a tone checklist. If we are on brand, on mission, it will sound like this. It will look like this. It'll feel like this. And then we came up with about a dozen proof points. Like, if we're doing this all correctly, these are some things that will stand out. And a couple that really resonated with our project was the museum is going to make opportunities for the community to participate in our content creation. Not just, here's what we did, give us feedback, but kind of asking for input before we move forward with something. And then the next is making sure that all the touch points in how we engage with our audience is accessible at every point. So it's not, if you really want to know our institution, come to our building, experience an exhibition, also a workshop, also visit our store, also talk to one of our docents. You don't have to do all that. You can just follow us on Instagram, which I encourage all of you to do. Or you can, read a story on our website, or, kind of noodle through our online collections and just kind of go through all of those steps. We wanted to make sure that they were accessible. So that means we had to think differently, which, museums are known for that. And that was a joke, you guys are supposed to laugh. How many of you have started a project with, I want to do X, and this is the resources that I have, right? You think resources first. Here's the resources I have, so this is what I can do. So we had to think, what does our audience want? How do they want to engage with us? Where are they at? And then, okay, this is where they're at. How do we get there? And we had to get that information because we don't have a huge budget for user research, understandably. We did some empathy interviews, and they were super lo-fi budget, as in me going to somebody's house and being like, hey, I want to talk to you about how you spend your free time and what influences your decisions. I think I was only able to do 5 or 6, and all of the information is like on legal sheets in my office, so I wasn't able to really share out that data, but it informed some assumptions that we were making. Like, actually, people who really love our museum don't check in with us that often. Someone was like, I really love your museum. Is that exhibition still up, the Ackerman exhibition? I'm like, I closed in 2003. I was like, no, but you should check out this exhibition that's on view right now. And she's like, oh, I'm just like, you know, it's a hard time, like I have a hard time keeping up with you guys. So knowing that already, that the tools that we have to communicate with our audience don't always reach. So just having something that's accessible was super, super important. And that also informed, in some ways, how we decided to transform our spaces. This is a rendering of our plaza level, and I kind of want to get up and start pointing at stuff, but I won't. So we typically, if you look at the very bottom, you'll see there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 entrances to this space. And there's also another one on the back. And that is up, we're up like 5 entrances from the one that we had that also, like, in front of our door was like also the back wall of an elevator. So it was like, come in if you want to. And now we're just opening up and just really making that whole first level free, so you can kind of stumble in and like just kind of walk in and browse, and you're not asked to pay or not asked to like make any decisions. I like to call this the floor of yes, like just do whatever you want. And that also, like that kind of thinking also informed, you know, the digital transformation that we'd have to have, because when we embarked on this renovation, we knew we were going to be closed for at least a year, and our website was not able to handle that kind of engagement. So we knew we needed to like get it together. So that included a look at our brands, look at our user experience, and just change some stuff.
Just like that.
Just like we needed to like get it together. This was our logo before our rebrand, and I like to say that this logo it just is an expression of all the insecurities of our museum. No one knows how to say our name, so let's make it super big, which made everyone not know how to say our name even more. You know, like international doesn't really fit in our museum. It makes it sound like an airport, so let's make it illegible. Also, we're a museum, so this is also, there it is. So that's what we got. And that's, again, just solving for problems that really aren't problems, right? And so this I had to work with for about 5 to 7 years. 7 years, and I had to do math in my head real fast. And when I had the opportunity to redesign, to go through a rebrand, I was like, the first thing I want to address is typography. I want people to be able to read our museum's name completely. So we worked with this type designer. His name is Yomar Augusto. He's great. He has crazy hair. He's awesome. And he developed this monotype typeface, which, you know, feels very handcrafted. I could do a whole hour presentation on how this typeface came to be. Come find me. I will tell you all about it. But just the fact that this is like a custom typeface that only we have, just typing the name of the museum is enough of a brand expression that we don't need like a logo. I mean, we have one, but we don't need one. I can just type Mingei International Museum on a piece of paper in this typeface, and I feel like that's branded. Now, that could be because I'm lazy or I'm genius. So if you look at the next slide, this is sort of like, our museum name, and we have different variations. We have like this really fun responsive shape that it pairs with sometimes. You can align it to the left, you can align it to the right, you can align it to the center, you can make a circle with it. All of these explorations TBD. But just looking at it compared side by side with our previous logo, it's just so much more legible. I'm dyslexic, and I can like breathe when I see this. So this was something that I was just really, really happy about, really, really excited about, and then was like, okay, so what's the rest of the brand? And we're not going to get into it, but one of the things that was really, wow, on that screen, it does not look accurate. Yeah. That is brown. So read the text, not the circles. So what we decided to do is just make a really subtle change. Instead of doing black and white, let's do really, really deep indigo so it kind of looks black, and a really, really off-white kind of, we have a lot of textiles in our collection, so we have these really cool muslin ribbons that I'm obsessed with, so I called the color muslin because I'm clever. And so we did, so that kind of replaced our black and white, and then we pair it with a high contrast color. That really kind of pops. And I like to keep our color palette responsive to, because we have all kinds of different objects in our collection. Depending on the context, it can be weird if it's paired with a hot pink or a yellow or whatever. So I like to keep that kind of a flex color. But the orange and the off-white and the just bugging me so much. The indigo really is sort of just with that subtlety with our typeface is really a strong expression of our brand. So I sent all this stuff to Stacy, and I was like, Ty, you do the website now. But we got together. No.
All right, my turn. So I think, throughout this whole process of empathy interviews, content planning, brand redesign, and really this examination of like, who are we as an organization? We were involved throughout that whole process as the digital partner because we wanted to make sure that the values that were being discussed from the very beginning and the choices that were being made in type and color were all something that we use to inform the website design. The website, should be really the expression of the brand. It should be the defining, platform for who the brand is, what it stands for. So it was really important that we were involved in those conversations, and providing feedback all throughout the process, which was really fantastic. Here's just a quick peek at some of the crazy sketches we were doing in some of our content strategy and information architecture phase. We didn't even really do high fidelity wireframes. We sat in a room together for hours and did paper sketches all over the walls. We put up big Post-it notes and said, who, based on the research that we've done, based on those empathy interviews we talked about earlier, based on the strategic vision of the organization, how can we organize content according to our user needs in a way that they're really going to understand and be able to find the information that they need. So at some point, this made sense to us. Honestly, looking at it again, I'm like, I don't even know what that means. So then, with those wireframes kind of in place and the type and colors and that brand really formed, one day we made this. So this is the new homepage of Mingei.org that we really were proud of because since we had done all that work diving into the brand and what our users needed, we had talked extensively about type and color. This came together in a really organic, beautiful way. Again, we wanted to make sure that content organization was really easy for people to find what they needed, focusing on, 6 top-level navigation items really helps people to quickly scan the information and dive into where they're most interested.
I just want to say something on that. And that's really another example of how we're thinking user first or customer first or visitor first is just what is the high level things that you want to do if you come to our website. You probably want to come visit us. You want to know what's going on. You want to see the art we collect. and then, you know, sort of like a bonus link that we're like, hey, you need to see this. Versus, I don't know if you've ever experienced this where every department kind of wants their button on the navigation, and you're like, listen. That's what you want, but does the why would they need to know about archives right now on the homepage? Can we ease them into that, lead them there versus you know, in terms of top level? Because once you get too many things up there, it's just they see nothing. They're just where's your phone number? Where are your hours?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think also one of the things that we've gotten really good feedback on is the hierarchy of links also in the top navigation. Our 4 sort of big main landing pages are a lot larger, and then membership and donate over there on the right, a little bit smaller in all caps. All of this using Mingei Mono as a web font. So it just created a little bit of hierarchy of information. We also didn't hide the main homepage information behind a carousel, you know, a slider. According to a lot of user research, you know, carousels only have the highest click-through rate on the first slide. So slides 2, 3, 4 barely get any clicks compared to the first slide. So you're spending time creating content that people aren't really engaging with. So rather, we decided to focus on pulling out these really beautiful collection objects, highlighting really key important information that people could click on, signifying links with some icons there. And then each time you refresh the homepage, a new collection object pops up. So there is a little bit of, you know, some fresh content there, but some, you know, just really easy to navigate. So again, navigation, content organization, color contrast and combination, just a little bit of checklist items. We've also included a lot of this information on your handout too, so you can kind of use it as a checklist when evaluating design work. And one of the really great interpretations of accessibility is this idea of creating context, context for your content. And the way we did that, one of our favorite sections on the site is stories. So it's sort of a reimagined blog post where the museum's writing longer form narratives and interviews with current working artists that the museum is trying to promote and support. So there's beautiful photo essays, videos, or not videos now. Soon, TBD. But there's capabilities to post that if they wanted. So it was just a really great way to showcase the museum's mission and work in a way that's really relatable and relevant for everyday people. On the back end here, this is a quick view of Craft CMS on the back end with this story. The great thing about Craft is that it's highly customizable, and this is actually a shot of the live preview feature. So on the left-hand side, that's the content editor. And then the right-hand side, you can see the content changes happening in real time. So it's just a really great way to create these really beautiful layouts very quickly. The content blocks are stackable and movable, so the museum has the ability to create photo grids, pull quotes, banner photos, all styled to match their brand, but infinitely customizable and flexible. You can reorder them in any order. And then you'll also notice the photos that were uploaded on the left are all different sort of proportions, but when they're displayed on the site on the right, they're cropped by the CMS automatically to fit the particular proportions and design styles that we set out earlier on. So, you know, in terms of accessibility, it's just really great for the staff to update and, you know, create these stories without any need to, you know, write code.
Yeah, just to hit on that internal accessibility as well, it's really easy to onboard people to the CMS. I would say it's just as powerful as some other CMSs out there that aren't very user-friendly. Like you don't have to be a developer to use the CMS. You do have to be a developer to set it up, I think.
Yes.
But
Get yourself a good developer.
Yes. Plug.
Yeah.
And I think too, you know, in terms of breaking up that content in blocks is so helpful because In terms of accessibility, you don't want to just give your visitors just a big wall of text to look at. You know, as someone who's dyslexic, I see that and just like my eyes cross, and I'm just like, nope, I'm next. Like, too long, didn't read. For reals. But this helps us to mix up the content a bit, pull out some quotes that we think will help people dive into that long form reading and do spend some time on it, and then hopefully encourage them to like keep browsing through the site.
And then, of course, one of the major pillars of accessibility is responsive web design. So the site, is able to scale down to fit any size screen or browser that the visitor is using. And that's something we're going to talk about a little bit more in a minute. But it was really important that no matter what was available on desktop is also available on mobile. And one of the ways we also wanted to ensure the mobile experience was as accessible and operable as possible was we made sure that with things like images, the mobile site isn't, or when you're accessing the site on mobile, you're not loading the same large images that you would on desktop. We made sure that the site was loading more optimized assets for mobile, making the performance a lot faster, which is really is important to the user experience. And then lastly, this is one of my favorite features on the homepage. Alexis wrote this clearly. Do you have any thoughts or feelings you'd like to share about our new website? We want to hear from you. So Alexis gave herself a direct link to website visitors to be able to get in touch and really share, what's working for you, what's not, and, give opinions.
So, since I've been with the museum, we've gone through, I want to say, 4 different iterations of our website. And every single time we've done an iteration or, kind of redesign or refresh, they found me somehow. And they're like, here's what I hate about your website. And, I used to take it personally, and I just be like, it's so easy, just like click, and then like go here, and then like you'll see it, and it's just there. But then I had to really change the way I think. We don't want people to learn how the wonky way we set up our website, calendar, exhibition page, whatever. We want people to get to the information as easily and as quickly as possible in some respects. If someone is, out front and they want to know what your hours are, let's not have them dig for that. And so I was like, you know what? I want to hear, we don't really have that much funding to like do ends and ends and ends of user testing. So if you have thoughts or opinions, I want to hear from you. Nobody has contacted me yet, so I'm just like,
Yay.
thanks.
Yeah.
I mean, we have gotten feedback about the website. So far, so good. But, it's just one of those things that, a lot of times you don't need resources to make some of this stuff happen. You just need to be a good listener and really just think and just really be aware of what your audience wants.
Yeah. So again, just a quick checklist of things we went over. Providing narrative and context for things like collection objects can really help visitors understand and feel knowledgeable about who you are and what you do. Headings and subheadings as ways to break up long pages of text. Thinking about your site as a flexible design system rather than just a collection of pages is a really great way to make sure that everything on the site is really well designed and accessible. Consider including the calls for feedback. I think this last one is also really important. This idea of editorial governance and training, making sure that everyone, who's updating content on the site or contributing content knows, your accessibility standards and, what is appropriate content for the museum to be publishing. And so one example we have of that, I'm sure you've all heard of this and been working on image alt text. And you maybe want to take it away.
We're going to do something kind of fun, or at least for me. Just to illustrate the importance of something as simple as alt text, I'd like to ask you all to close your eyes. And I'm going to read the alt text of an object in our website and then see if you can envision what the object is. And those of you who are not closing your eyes, fine. Okay, you guys all ready? Okay. The alt text reads, chair. Okay, now you're envisioning what that means, what that could be. We're a museum of folk art, craft, and design, so it could be anything. All right, you want to see the chair? Is that what any of you pictured? No. Why? Because I probably didn't do a good job of describing it to you, right? And
That's what alt text is.
That's what.
Description for screen readers.
And the caption of this could read, "Chair, Naked as St. Paul, 2011. Gift of the artist." Does that explain to you what that chair is? No. So really just kind of being more descriptive can really help. So we're going to do this one more time with a different object. Oh. Do you want to read the alt text?
Okay. I don't know how to pronounce this word.
Alahibre.
An alahibre is a brightly colored Mexican folk art sculpture typically depicting a mythical creature. This alahibre has the body of a caterpillar, it's green with yellow spots, and its underbelly is pink with red veins spidering out. It has large human-like ears and antennae on top of its head. Its face has large expressive eyes with stripes on its face, and its mouth is open, exposing its sharp teeth.
So you guys all have a picture?
Ah,
Is it that? Or close?
Not bad.
So we could have just said alahibre, which who knows how a screen reader is going to pronounce that word. But we can do such a better job of describing what a person who can't see what's in that image. Because if you're visually impaired in some way, this may be the only really effective way that you're going to know what's in artwork or what we exhibit or textures, colors, expressions, things like that. Now, not to say that every single object in our website has this kind of descriptive text. We're working on it. But we know that in order to solve for accessibility, we don't need, some like super fancy fill in the blank. We just need a good writer. And luckily we have one on staff. So this is something that we're really taking seriously and putting a lot of time and effort into.
Sure. Yeah, we're going to go through some of this a little quickly. And on the handout, we talk about what some of these terms mean, W3C, WCAG. These are like the standards bodies and recommendations for how to implement accessibility standards on your website. Assistive technology is the actual tools that you might use to access the website that are a little different than maybe a desktop computer or even a phone. We're talking about screen readers, keyboard input, which is an important one, even Braille readers. There are lots of different ways that someone could be accessing your website that's not going to be in a traditional sort of desktop computer mode. So instead of going too deep into the technology, we'll do a high-level view of this framework, which is the acronym is POUR, which is perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So perceivable is simply, can every audience member access the same content? If you have a screen reader, you're still accessing the same website with maybe a different way to visualize an image, but you're still getting a description of that image. That's one example of perceivable. Also, do forms have labels so that someone with a screen reader can know what to put in each form field? Operable is really how does it function on these alternative devices? If you're using a keyboard input, can you tab through each item in the navigation and hit enter to get to the next page? Can you open and operate buttons with your voice control? Those are all things that if you're not thoughtful about how you're implementing this technology, can easily not work correctly. Understandable is really more of that contextual sense of, are you using a lot of jargon or acronyms that your audience isn't going to understand? And I love the idea of using the word art instead of collections in the main navigation. How many more people are going to see that and know what that means and want to click on it and experience the museum in a different way than they would have before? And robust. This is just talking about failing gracefully. Sometimes maybe you're on an error page. Maybe you click something and it doesn't do what you expected it to do. Maybe your web connection is really slow, does the user still get something useful out of that interaction? Can they find what they need? So failing gracefully is how I like to think about it. These days, we have a lot of really great built-in tools with HTML. 10, 20 years ago when you were coding websites, you really had to know a lot about accessibility to do it right. Now it's so much easier if you're using the right tags, like heading tags and navigation tags. Screen readers understand these tags intuitively and they know where to go on the page. So as long as you're using the most up-to-date and kind of intuitive standards, your site's going to be 100% more accessible. A very simple example of this is also the skip content link, which not every website has, but every website should. It takes about 5 minutes to implement. It's just if you're using either a screen reader or even a keyboard input, the first item that you see on the web page or that you focus on the web page is a link to skip all the navigation and all the extra stuff to get to the content. And we'll actually demonstrate that in the voiceover, I think. And I cannot stress hard enough third-party software. If you're using, let's say, WordPress and you're just installing plugins or a theme, or even if you're a developer and you're using JavaScript libraries, not everything is built with accessibility in mind, and you really need to vet those tools and test them and make sure that the people who created those tools are thinking about accessibility in the same way that you are. And I cannot stress enough testing with real assistive devices. And so has anyone here ever used a voiceover or a screen reader of any kind? That's good. I mean, that's more than I was expecting, actually. So we did a little screen reader test with one of the story pages
the
on the
audio
website. These microphones pick up a lot if we want to move it down.
Why is it muted?
It's press up. No, it's our audio is broken. I don't know.
Okay.
No, so
Not
I'm sorry, we won't do that one. But anyway, testing with real assistive devices, real actual screen readers, and making sure that everything makes sense. Button labels, heading tags are a really important part of the process.
What did I just do here? Oh my gosh.
I don't know what you did.
I'm so sorry. I just ruined our slides.
Can you click on the little green?
The green
That one.
button.
That's going to have to be.
Oh, there we go.
And finally, checking your work, proofreading, having another set of eyes. In our case, we actually hired a third-party firm, a local developer, to take a look at all of the code and tell us what we did right, tell us what we did wrong. And we learned a lot. We found out that our first effort was very good, but there were definitely some things that could be better. And we went through and we actually implemented all of those changes very recently. And we're really happy with the result of that collaboration.
Yeah, here I would just like to call back to the work we did in our digital strategy here, where Airtable is where we keep a lot of information, do a lot of work, feeds directly into Craft. So like our staff list, if we update it, like this is now your email address, this is now your phone number, this person no longer works with us, this person just got hired. We only have to update that in one place internally, and it automatically pushes to our website. Our exhibition calendar, or our list of exhibitions that our team works on, that automatically pushes to our website. Same with our events. So because we did the work of streamlining how we work together, we were able to add another kind of another piece of software in our tech stack to just kind of automate some of the things that I would be like, oh, I just hired someone and I forgot to put them on the website, but they're also responsible for media contacts. So I don't have to worry about that. It just automatically updates.
And so, we're just really excited that, with all of the work that we're doing and continuing to do, like we said, it's not a one and done thing. It's not something you achieve one day. It's something accessibility we're working on constantly to make sure the site is, is updated and following best practices and standards. This is a tool, is this Lighthouse? Lighthouse. that you can use.
It's
Oh, sorry.
built into Google Chrome. So
Built into
everybody
Google
has-
Chrome, right, that you can use. We have a 97 rating on the homepage, so we're kind of excited about that. We're going to just continue, working on page by page, making sure that the site is continually updated with the latest accessibility best practices in mind. So to wrap it up, and then we'd love to open it up for questions. But again, what we're learning, practicing accessibility is a constant process. It's a journey that we're excited to keep going on together and keep integrating it into how the museum updates the site and its content. Sometimes it's just about identifying one step that you can take and just keep building from there. On the handout that we gave you, we included all of our, all of the steps that we're taking, that we took during the design process, but also that we're currently taking every day. So we hope that it can also serve as a really helpful checklist when you go back to your organizations. And accessibility is a values-led investment. It's really an opportunity to reach a lot more people. It can have really great SEO results as well. Updating alt text, cleaning up your data. This is something that's super valuable. And again, it can just be a guide for developing and maintaining assets and keeping up with clean data. So it's really a win-win for everybody. It's not extra work. It's just working smarter, right? So we're all about it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yay.
And I just want to reiterate how essential it is to have good partners. Again, Stacy and Dalton were partnered with the museum way before we even started any of this work, and we aligned on our values. So, yeah. Any questions?
In the back.
I was just curious about the SEO thing, because we just went through this as well. Accessibility and SEO are kind of overlapping, and we saw like amazing results. Did you see that?
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time when we take when we're working with websites that haven't really put that much effort into accessibility, usually the side effect of that is poor SEO. So when you build a website and you put that at the forefront, metadata, alt text, also things like heading tags are really good for SEO, and they're also really good for screen readers. Making sure your site performs well, just as fast and loads fast, that's good for people with slow connections. That's also a really good signal for Google that you're trying hard. And so those signals help you rank organically. It's not something you have to pay somebody to do. It's not spammy. It's a really natural way to show that you care about your content.
I think it was about, I can't remember when we took this stat, but we saw about an 85% jump in organic search traffic.
We closed for renovation the day after Labor Day 2018, in the year of our Lord. And our website traffic dropped 85%, just immediately next day. They're like, we'll see you when you're back. And once we launched our website, I want to say the following October, or actually, no, was it October? May. It's just a blur, guys. I can't even tell you. Sometime later, we launched this website, and I mean, we've gotten back 80% of what we lost. So just that huge jump, and a lot of that is new traffic. A lot of that is people who. We have a lot of people that come over from Pinterest, because apparently if you like to quilt, you're on Pinterest. Well, all of those links are broken. They've been broken since I got here. And we don't have the resources to invest in that platform right now. So just even putting up a helpful 404 page that's like, hi, were you looking for our collections link? Helped kind of maintain some of that traffic and get people engaged. So yes, 100%. Yes.
I have a question, and it's okay if you can't answer it. How much does it cost to have your own typeface?
Okay. So that's a good question. I will say that we had a steep discount. I would say that there are I would say it's not as inaccessible as it previously was. I think if you work at a museum, a lot of designers want to do something for a museum. I don't know why, but I'm just like, sure, fine, cool, yeah, come on in. It was something we definitely had to get a grant for. But I have to say it's so worth the investment, especially if you are working with someone who's really, like, you have a brief, you have requirements, you're not just, like, allowing some typeface designer to be like, I have this typeface I really want to give birth to in the world. Yeah. Yes.
And add that actually, basically what we did is reallocated money we had set aside to hire a creative agency, and instead, you know, we knew we had some in-house talent assembled and good partners like Stacey and Dalton, and we really reallocated, instead of hiring an agency, we hired someone to create this typeface and a flexible system around it that we were able to then do the work to fully realize and implement. So it was almost, you know, we went into it thinking, oh, we're going to hire an agency.
Yeah.
Instead, we got custom typeface.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I think if you know agency work, we'll get way more out of that typeface than we will agency work. Yes.
One of the things that I have been trying to figure out with my team is how best to communicate some of those decisions that need to be implemented downstream by the engineers, which are essentially design decisions to help screen readers, for example, the correct tab order and things of that nature. And I'm just wondering, did you find a good process for being able to sort of communicate them as part of your artifact? Or
Sure, yes.
actually make sure that the end result is exactly how you wanted them to be read out for the screen?
Yeah.
Assistive technologies.
I think that's a really great question, sort of talking about process. How do you sort of translate design for the developers and make sure all of those details are caught in the process? So one of the, we sort of like zoomed through that part of going from like wireframes to all of a sudden we have a website. So there was sort of a mock-ups process, you know, in there where once we took the paper wireframes, we created mock-ups, and then we use a prototyping app called Envision to take the static mock-ups and then essentially create a clickable kind of prototype of what the website could look like. Within Envision, there are some tools where you can itemize and create notes that get sent to developers to indicate, you know, this is why this decision got made. So you're kind of creating the artifact of the notes directly in context of the mock-ups. So it just makes it really easy for our team to look at the designs and then read that layer of notes on top of it. We also work, you know, our design and development process is pretty fluid too. So a lot of the times we might, you know, indicate a certain design in a mock-up and then move into code and correct it in the browser together. So there is a bit of that fluid process too, where we're designing a little bit in the browser.
Well, and I would also say, like, our design process, like, Dalton's included in that. Dalton is like the kind of the developer lead. And I think too, like, having like sort of developer empathy and just sort of like understanding, like asking questions like, how hard is this to implement? How much time does this take to implement? Is there another way to achieve this? I think when we designed, we were cognizant of the implications on the development side. And I think for something like getting Craft and Airtable to integrate, I really pushed hard for, because I knew that it would pay off like, you know, kind of afterwards. But on other things, I was just kind of like, okay, there's a simpler way to get to this than what.
Yeah. I think having a developer through the design process is super helpful too. And I wouldn't show anything to anyone without running it by Dalton and the development team to make sure that what we were creating was, you know, in fact going to be buildable and not just look good. Yeah.
I'm thinking specifically about the accessibility. Because I think sometimes designers sort of think, oh, you know, here's my wireframe. Here's
Right.
where all the elements are going to go and how it should
Yeah.
operate. But aren't really necessarily thinking about that extra layer, which is crucial, because
Totally.
someone needs to make those decisions.
Well,
Not then you're just leaving it to the default, and that's not necessarily what someone using those assistive technologies needs.
Right. Yeah.
I think the designer needs some constraints. Like, they need to, like, we have that creative brief that have those sort of like that checklist of what a good design that's on brand requires. So I think it would, like, again, that shared value, like we know we're solving for not only a beautiful website, but accessibility. It needs to be useful. That was like, kind of 1A, 1B, beautiful, useful together. It's,
We actually took the time to invest and take our whole team to work with a consultant who talked about accessibility. So we got everyone on the same level of understanding in terms of how important accessibility was for our websites. So we had executives, developers, and the project manager all there working with consultants who were using this same technology and whatnot. So we could see firsthand how it would affect their website. And I think having that shared language really helped us understand how we could better.
Yeah. That criteria too, having that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
your question, and then in the back, and then you. So, yeah.
I was just curious how the WCAG guidelines factored into your work. Like, how did you approach them? Where you do, like, say, we want to do AAA or top AA,
Sure.
where you sort of like,
Yeah.
how did you approach that?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think at this point, AA is the minimum standard that you need to look to achieve. And there are lots of different, I've read through the WCAG website dozens of times, and there's still things I don't know 100% how to implement. And that's where relying on other people's interpretations who have done it well in the past is really helpful. So, there are some accessibility consultants who've put out ebooks that turn that sort of technical language into something that's more understandable, that we can all then sort of use as an assessment tool. And then just having a checklist, a worksheet to check against, and using good audit tools. Google Lighthouse is great. There are lots of tools out there. Some of them are more user-friendly than others. There's something called Andy, which I actually just discovered recently, but it's an open source tool. It's published by the United States federal government, surprisingly. It's very easy to use, and it's very informative in terms of Andy, A-N-D-I. That one's on the worksheet, actually, because it's just a browser bookmarklet that works in any browser, and you just run it on any site, and it'll tell you contrast ratios. It'll tell you missing alt text. It's really thorough, but just also easy to use. Yeah, it's a great tool.
Yes.
I'll say to follow right along with that. On an ongoing basis, how have you adjusted your workflow to incorporate the time necessary to craft the right tags and copy, and how does that work?
Yeah, I think so. Just utilizing all of my team. So again, we have a part-time photographer, a full-time content producer, and a part-time graphic designer. And sort of any time that they're contributing assets that touch the web, they have a list of things that they need to do. Also, to go along with how Airtable plugs into Craft, if you want to publish an event to our website, you have to include an image, and that image needs alt text. And everybody knows my expectations for alt text. So, that's been just the easiest way to kind of inform people, take the time to train them appropriately, bring them along. But also we have firm constraints. Unless you do this doesn't happen. So that has really helped. But also just, when we did the accessibility audit, a lot of the things that came back as problematic were things that I realized I hadn't trained my staff on yet. We had a full turnover in our team, and I was just like, oh yeah, I didn't tell them about that yet. So, a lot of that is just sort of kind of keeping the pace and keeping your team educated and letting them know why it's important. And, it's one of those things that it takes time and effort, but it's not inachievable.
I kind of have two questions, but the first one is, you've listed some screen readers on here. I was wondering, are the ones you recommend, are they free in case we're brave enough to just go in and listen to our pages?
The ones that are on that list are all built into the operating system. So there's a Windows one, an Android one, and a Mac/iPhone one. Those are all free. Those are built in. Those aren't the ones that everybody uses, but they're the ones that probably are the most accessible as end users for us. And then they're less, I would say, a little less specialized. So if someone who has a true vision disability and relies on the software every day may have a preference for something that's a little more custom. Some of them are actually very expensive, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that's why we start with the tools that are most accessible to everyone, because we know a lot of people are going to be using them.
You can also work with the communities that assist people with disabilities. Like one of our next steps is to reach out to
The San Diego Center for the Blind.
San Diego Center for
and
the
Braille Institute.
yeah,
as well.
to have them kind of do a stress test on the site and see how it's measuring up with that community.
Okay, sorry, my other question was, you were mentioning load time for images, having different sized images for various
Sure.
things, but we're moving away from having multiple images, moving toward IIIF. I don't know, those are large images. Does this,
Sure. Yeah.
or is it not?
IIIF works a little differently because it loads tiles rather than a whole image at once. So when you zoom in, you're actually loading higher resolution versions at each load, right? Like as you zoom in, you're getting a smaller piece of the picture, but that piece is a higher quality. Versus the way that we do images on the Mingei site, because this is not for the collection, we're talking mostly about more of the marketing and public-facing part of the website, is called responsive images. And so responsive images are, you define several different sources at different sizes and sometimes at different aspect ratios depending on, so if we know this person's on a mobile device, it's probably rectangular and tall, so the aspect ratio is going to be different. The pixel size is going to be smaller because it's a smaller screen. And you have you can be as flexible as you want. We usually do 3 to 5 different image sizes per asset. So the browser then determines based on the network speed and the dimensions of the window which asset is going to be the best to pick.
And that's automatic in the CMS.
It's
not
100% automatic. You upload one image,
yeah.
and you can choose.
It's one image, and then the CMS resizes it depending on the size of the browser.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it is still one image.
It's
still
still
one
a single
image,
image.
yeah.
You on
Sorry.
on the so on the editor side, you're adding one image, and then the template makes all these decisions about, and then the other thing that you can do that's really cool in Craft in particular is you can set a focal point for the image. So as your window gets smaller, instead of just cropping the center, which is often not what you want, you can say this person over here on the right is the focal point of the image. So if you've got a widescreen, you get the whole thing. If you've got a narrow screen, you only get that person's face. It's a
Yeah,
right,
you won't
exactly.
crop their head.
Yeah. It's a great feature.
I love Craft. I won't lie. It's amazing.
Yeah.
You guys should check it out. Any other questions? Yes.
So what alt tech did you use for the chair?
It's actually I was just going through trying to find the craziest chair. So that is actually on our online collection database, which I will get to, and it's on my list. But all of the images on our website, we have sort of curated mini collections, and all those have very descriptive alt text. Thanks to our content producer, Ashley. Yes.
I'm wondering what repository you use for your collection that communicates with Craft. Is it all in Airtable?
So, in terms of assets and images and things like that, so the CMS has its own repository for that. So what happens is we attach an image in Airtable. Let's say I have a teacher's event, so I put a picture of teachers getting down at our museum, and then that kind of goes automatically links in our CMS. So it takes that asset and then it does the 3 to 5 versions of it and all of that good information. But if we want to switch out that image, all we have to do is switch it out in Airtable, and then it re-uploads. So this
Get it from and put it into Airtable.
Google Drive. Google Drive is where all of our marketing, all of our images live. Yeah, Google Drive is. Sorry.
How big is the collection?
26,000 objects.
And those are all in Google?
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
Well, yeah.
she's asking about the collection database though.
Okay, so the authoritative sort of image of record is in Google Drive. That then also lives in our collections database, and then that has a website-facing interface so that you can see that image there as well.
they're not really tightly integrated yet. That is on our.
It's on the list. We got to get like I said, accessibility is decision to decision. It's step by step. It's a journey. It's not a destination. There's a lot of things on my list to get to, for sure. Any other questions? I thought I saw one more. No. Thank you guys for staying.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.